Welcome to the very first episode of the Jordan and Vanessa Show.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Vanessa.
And now we're going to talk to each other.
About very important things.
Yes.
So where to start? How about we start with our story?
We could definitely start with our story.
Who are Jordan and Vanessa?
Buckingham.
Oh, yeah. Buckingham is our last name.
Mutual.
Because we're married, by the way. Jordan and I are co-founders of vibrationfit.com, and basically our intention at Vibration Fit is to raise people's vibration.
Totally, including our own.
Yes. So that is our intention with this podcast.
Yes.
Is to really, what was the term that you were using the other day? It's
capture our clarity. That's what
Yes, capture clarity.
Yep. So whenever we have clarity on particular things that would help raise people's vibrations, we are going to capture it here. This podcast and all the stuff that we do on social media, for me, is actually for us to capture those moments of clarity whenever we have them. Or there are just tons of times during the day where we're going through and we're talking about something and we say, oh man, that'd be really great for a podcast, or oh man, that would be really great for a YouTube video, or oh man, that'd be really great for vibrationfit.com, whatever it is. And in those moments when it's nice and fresh and juicy, we're trying to write it down and get in the studio as quickly as we can to actually document that idea, because you know how it is when you're in flow. When you're in flow, it's like, wham, there's so much clarity. And then sometimes even a day or two later, somebody's like, hey, why don't you go on that rant that you were on Tuesday? And it's like, what rant?
What was I even talking about? Oh, that guy was in alignment. This one today. I'm not in alignment.
Totally furious.
I do not like myself at all. And I don't remember what that guy knew.
Yeah.
So we can go back to these podcast episodes and actually listen and remember the clarity through what we've captured.
Totally. So we're going to capture our
clarity
in here. Into these microphones. You know, for me, I really want to be able to look back on these. Like, I actually think about this, like, a lot of our life, you're really good at social media. I've basically been a ghost for a while, but you're really good about taking pictures of our family and our 3 children. New update.
By the way, we have 3 kids.
It's kind of funny, like, thinking about your first podcast episode, because there are going to be people watching this that have never, ever seen us before, or maybe at this point we're like super big and famous and we have like a big following and people just want to see like what was the first episode that they did, like what was it back then, and then they're gonna see this
us
and they're
rambling.
They're gonna be inspired. Like, if those 2 people can figure it out, then I'm gonna just totally figure it out.
I too can figure it out.
I too can figure this out.
Yes. So definitely first intention is to capture the clarity that we understand through our days, that those aha moments that become so clear that we just want to remember forever. And our second intention is to spread that out into the world so that other people too can have those moments of clarity and those moments that allow them to just let everything click in their lives and really live more of their life above the green line. Can you explain a little bit about what above the green line means? We talk about it a lot, but I know that's not a normal term for people.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the things we talk about are not going to be normal terms. I mean, first off, like, we talk about infinite consciousness a lot. We talk about being more than we see in the mirror. So to give, I guess, a basic rundown of some of our beliefs in the universe is, number one, I believe that we're the physical extension of a much greater, bigger, broader energy that is whatever you want to call it, right? And I believe that in my physical body, I have emotional states, and those emotional states are basically indicators of how alignment my thoughts are with my broader perspective, whatever you want to call that bigger energy. So when my thoughts are in harmony with that bigger energy, then I live in dominantly higher emotional states. Like even now I'm getting chill bumps just thinking about it. Right?
Wow.
Just like, whoa, when I'm up there. It's like a big moment because we've been talking about this for a while and this is our first episode.
This is truly the culmination of decades of us becoming who we are today.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Our visions and our dreams of really getting vibration fit out into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really just like figuring out like what any of that even means and how to apply it to your life in a meaningful way to build a life that you're really satisfied and excited about. You know, that's all kind of in our history. So for me, an above the green line life basically means that dominantly my thoughts are in harmony with that broader portion of my consciousness, and I'm dominantly feeling elevated emotional states. I'm happy, I'm gleeful, I'm joyful, I'm having fun with my kids, I'm having fun with my wife, I'm doing things that I love to do, and I'm really enjoying myself, but also being present in the moment and being able to really sit inside of that above the green line emotional state and experience it and enjoy it. So I actually think about it a lot, the word enjoy, like if you break it in half, it's like in joy. So for me, it's sort of like inject joy into whatever situation you're in. And I feel like we can do that by choosing what we focus on and how we focus on it and the meaning that we give it. So that's kind of a brief explanation of above the green line. Eventually, we'll talking about an emotional guidance system. That's basically a range of emotions going all the way from the top at freedom, empowerment, joy, that awesome feeling of high, all the way down to total depression, disempowerment, not fun down here. So essentially, if you've got an emotional range, there's a point in there, it's right around contentment, you know, right kind of between boredom and contentment that we call the green line, where it kind of breaks into an elevated feeling where you feel like energy is coming into your body and you've got, you know, the vitality and the energy to do the things you want to do. And below that, it kind of feels like you're getting drained. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh man.
And
Not a
that's
super good feeling.
I love how you explained all of that. And I really see us being this niche because I see a lot of things nowadays where a lot of people kind of attack emotion and they try to separate themselves from emotion and just kind of try to pile drive through it. And they don't use it as guidance, just
As a tool.
To really guide them back into a feel-good place. They try to get through it instead of listening to it and using that as a guide. So if you feel off, if you feel down one day or one moment in the day, I feel like some people kind of doom the day and they say, oh no, this is a really bad day. Things aren't going well for me. And instead of saying this is a doomed day, you could just use those emotions as guidance and say, it's okay. I'm not in alignment right now, but I understand that's only because of the perspective I'm holding right now. And I can always find my way back in just by choosing a little bit better thought.
Yeah, totally. Like you and I talk about that a lot of essentially isolating the incident. But when you become self-aware, and there really is a lot to unpack in this. So thank goodness it's a series.
Yeah.
This won't be the only podcast you have here. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, when you start to think about how emotional states work and you think about all of that, we also talk about isolating the incident. So isolating the incident is you're having a particular thought in a particular way with a particular perspective, giving it a particular meaning, and you're having an emotional response to that particular moment. And like you said, that's a moment, that's an incident, that's like right there. You don't have to doom the day just because you got in a negative emotional state one time, right? And I really do understand that side because that's been me a lot in my life. I'm definitely a spiritual person, but I'm also very motivated. I like to get out there and do the world.
Very intense.
Yeah, very intense. I like to build businesses. I like to make money. I like to have fun with my family. I like to go on adventures. I like to travel the world. I like to do cool stuff. And sometimes it can feel like emotional states can sort of hold you from what you want to do. Like, I'm afraid, so now I can't take the action to start the business, right? I'm afraid of what someone might think about me, so now I can't start the podcast. I can't put something on YouTube. And there are these like deeper, like emotional states that people kind of feel are a hindrance to moving forward. So if you don't have this basic understanding of source energy, infinite consciousness, you as a physical extension of that infinite consciousness receiving guidance based on what you're focused on and how you're focused on it, then you can't bridge that gap seeing your emotional state as a tool. You just see it as a potential hindrance.
Right.
So they basically do kind of what you said, is put the emotions on a chopping block.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't plug into doctrine. Don't listen to that. Like, if there's any emotional state that's holding you back or hindering you from what you want to do, you just got to suppress it. You got to kill it. You got to ignore it. You got to push through it. You got to whatever.
Right.
Whereas on our doctrine, ultimately, an emotional state is the target, right?
Right.
So if your target is an emotional state above the green line, then, weed whacking your emotions isn't exactly.
It's not really the path.
It's not really the fastest path of least resistance to a higher emotional state. Isn't figuring out how to numb yourself,
right,
or how to ignore that. So
totally. And I feel like one of the things that makes us feel so confident in bringing out the podcast now and launching Vibration Fit is the life that we've created, which is a life of total freedom. And that's pretty unique in this world. Day to day, I feel like we even forget sometimes just how incredible it is going through our day. But we have total freedom. We have total time freedom. We can spend as much time with our kids as we want, as much time with each other as we want. We have total location freedom. We've gone off globetrotting. We've spent a month in Australia. We've gone to Colorado for months at a time. We've gone to Texas for months at a time. We've gone to Europe. We go all over the place whenever we want. And so we have the time freedom. We have the location freedom. We have all of these freedoms that we've created in our life. Financial independence. We have financial freedom. So we have the freedom to do what we choose when we choose without the stress of money, which if you ask around, I don't think there's a whole lot of people that have achieved that in their life. And that is a huge thing off your plate, like a huge stressor that is eliminated once you achieve financial freedom.
Yeah, financial independence.
So yeah. I believe that we feel so passionate about what we're doing because we didn't always have those freedoms. At one time, we didn't have any of those freedoms. And so I think going into the backstory of where we were and where we are now is also really powerful. So maybe you could start there with where you were when we met on November 28th of 2015, which is now... This year is our 10-year anniversary of when we met. Yeah. I was 21 years old and you were 28.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting that you say that because, just a precursor, the way that I've built my life, I'm very fundamentally practical. I got an engineering degree, which I'll talk about in the story, but I really want to see something work, something functional. Like I like things in my life to work. Like you should see our closets, like we have a very functional closet system inside of there. And I really like the idea of repeatable, consistent systems that will output a result consistently based on inputs. So I really like that. So that's one of the things that I would definitely like to say about like us starting this podcast now and starting vibrationfit.com is, if you know us well, obviously we've been together 10 years. This is our first podcast. Like, we really do like to have the results in hand before we discuss it publicly with others. So for me, it was important to have built a life that I was proud of.
We're very results driven.
Very results driven. So like it was important to me to build a life that I was really proud of in advance of launching a lot of this stuff. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but at the end of the day, for me, I have seen a lot of people make their rise inside of personal development. They start teaching people how to be better, but at the time that they're starting, a lot of times they're a hot mess. Their life is a hot mess. You know what I mean? And sometimes that can play itself out later down the line. And for me, I just wanted to be congruent. I just wanted my life and the way that I feel about my life to be able to be projected into our ventures.
Yeah,
So,
we wanted to be vibrationally in alignment with it. We didn't want to be scattered.
yeah, totally. So if you look back, you know, it's kind of like, where do you start with your life?
Well, I think
was born as a little tiny baby. 3 wise men came and gave me presents, and there was a donkey. I'm just kidding. I'm not Jesus.
little baby Jesus.
little baby Jordan.
Well, I think along with you being systems driven and in that role as a petroleum engineer, I remember you saying that you would complete your work in how many hours on Monday morning?
Yeah, so maybe that's a little bit of the background is, you know, whenever I came up in school, I always believed that I had something special. I always believed that I was going to live an extraordinary life, and not special compared to others, but just special energy, like a unique vigor for life. Like I knew that I was going to figure out how to make it, quote unquote. So I came up essentially just believing that good things were headed for me. And then as I entered my teens and came into early adulthood, it was around the time like 18 to 20, that kind of range, that I got introduced to infinite consciousness and the natural laws of the universe in the way that I discuss them now. I had been introduced to them previously. Fortunately, I have a pretty cool mom who's kind of like hippie-licious, you know. Like she was
super
like,
fun.
Like she was in the 70s when the 70s were the 70s. You know what I mean? So it was like, whoa. So, and then my dad was a really open, super cool dude too. So they didn't like try to stick me in a box, which was really handy because I'm kind of unboxable. So, but it was whenever I was coming into like being a man, you know, and figuring that out. So I essentially had the idea and I began to commit to the universal principles. And that's when vision boards started to happen. That's when vision for my life started to take form. That's when the whole question of what do you want to do when you grow up? You know, it's like kind of has to come to fruition where it's like, well, you're grown up, dude. Like, what are you going to do?
And I've read some of those original vision documents that you drafted. And even back then, you had drafted what we're doing right now.
Yeah. I just had it. I kind of had it intrinsically in me that I wanted to do this at some point. It was just a function of getting the results that I believe, like, you know, that I'm proud of before I did it. I guess, you know.
Proving it to yourself.
Proving that the stuff that was going on in my head
actually worked.
were viable. You know?
Right.
And like I knew that universal principles were a legit thing, and I know that sounds kind of silly to say, but it's like, well, universal principles are a legit thing.
Well, at first it's basically a hypothesis, right?
Yeah, hypothesis
until it's proven.
Just an idea you can test. So
right.
The idea of like universal principles,
like the law of attraction, different things like that.
Different things like that. The basic universal principle being thoughts become things.
Correct.
So that's whenever you start reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. You start to read business books. You start to get into the spiritual side, maybe where some people who are channeling or whatever are speaking from infinite consciousness with a unbridled perspective, and you start to get your mind open to different pathways to how universal law could help you turn your thoughts into things and basically actualize a cool existence, you know?
Right.
So it was all around that time, and I remember doing vision boards and doing things, and I started college and didn't really know what I wanted to do in college. I started like as a business administration degree, something like that. And ultimately, I took a path into engineering school, and I went to the University of Texas at Austin, got a petroleum engineering degree, and went to work in engineering in West Texas.
Very difficult path to take.
Very difficult path.
And expensive.
But at the end of the day, I just figured, at the time I wanted to do something where I knew I could make money. Mm-hmm. And I had an opportunity presented to me that if I got a petroleum engineering degree, then I would have a job, and it would be a high paying job. So it was like, okay, well, if I'm going to college, like I might as well do that. So, but I remember even back then, like, getting into UT was on my vision board. You know what I mean? Things like that. But like, because I'd started at a different university, you have to get accepted into the University of Texas at Austin, into what at the time was the #1 petroleum engineering program in the world at the Cockrell School of Engineering. So it's like the most prestigious degree in that field comes from that university at the time that I got it. So I remember just having that on my vision board, and even, like really trying to get into vibrational harmony with being in Austin and living my life there and getting the petroleum engineering degree. So, it basically happened. I did get in, and, it helped me like to start to forge this idea for my life. But whenever I started in engineering and I started working, I built systems. So the first job that I came into, I was like, ooh, cool. I can, what are my responsibilities? And they told them to me. And I basically built a system whereby all my work was done in 4 hours on Monday morning, not for the week, but for the month.
What did your employer think about that?
Well, they thought it'd be cool if I kept working 60 or 80 hours a week, in addition to the responsibilities being done, to find other ways to be productive inside of the business, which, of course, most business owners would do,
Yeah, they want their value for the dollars that they're spending for you to work for them.
Totally. And I did. I created additional responsibilities for myself, and I went for it. But ultimately, like, I just love systems with clear inputs and clear outputs. Mm-hmm. It's very simple. And in engineering, that's one of the great things about engineering: clear inputs, clear outputs, math, until you get to imaginary math. It's like, come on, guys. None of this is real.
Even math doesn't understand this math.
Doesn't understand this math. Like, you just took something super concrete, like 2 + 2 = 4. And now you're making total ridiculousness. Yeah,
that's for another podcast.
Yeah, it's a totally different podcast. But ultimately, got into petroleum engineering, and I worked there long enough to pay off my student loans, which was great. I was able to do that in the first 2 years. But just felt this calling where it's like, dude, this isn't a fit for your life. Mm-hmm. Like, this doesn't fit for your life. Like, ultimately, you mentioned my Life I Choose document. So essentially, my last year of college, I actually wrote my very first one of these. Before, it had been like, lists and vision boards and all sorts of different things. But I wrote an actual physical document that described in detail the life that I wanted to live.
How long was it?
I choose. The first one was like 23 pages. You got to write everything. Yeah, but it covered like my body, and it covered my money and how I make money and the assets that I wanted to acquire and do, the relationship that I wanted.
Which, by the way, was spot on.
That was pretty much the only part that was spot on.
That gave me goosebumps when I read it.
Yeah,
it was exactly
I
me.
wrote you down. Absolutely.
Not in physicality, but in personality.
Yeah. Well, that was the interesting thing about like how that came to be. It was just like, it was so spot on the way I wrote it.
Which, by the way, we're developing at Vibration Fit as well.
Yeah.
Teaching people how to create their own Life I Choose document, or Life We Choose.
Yeah, obviously it's super important. But that was when I created the first one.
Right.
And, at some point, you got to look at your document and look at your life and see, do these match up? And that's actually one of the best things about having some sort of life I choose document.
Some sort of vision.
Some sort of vision for your life is so that you can, as you go through your day, you can look and have something to compare it against. Like, am I living the life that I wanted to live, or am I not?
Because there are so many decisions that we're faced with every single day. And if you don't have that steadfast vision, then you have no filter to run things through, to run all of the choices through. But if you have that filter, it's like, it's an easy yes or no. It's like, I know exactly that is my vision that will take me in that direction. Or no, I'm going to close that door and wait for a different one to open.
Totally. And, when you're doing that kind of solo, you don't have your partner or your spouse there to do that. Like, now that I have you, and now it's not a life I choose document, it's a life we choose document, and you know what's in it. Like, you're really good about telling me, like, that's not in our document, dude. It's like,
I guess it's not.
You're right. It's like that's not in there. So
marketing is really powerful these days and very influential.
Yeah.
If you're not sure about who you are and what you want, someone else is really quick to tell you what it is you should want.
Yeah, totally. So, but long and short of it is, like, the petroleum engineering, the life that I was living, the way that it unfolded was not in harmony with the life I choose document that I'd written for myself. And fortunately, I had this belief in universal principles. And among those beliefs were, if you can achieve vibrational harmony with it, it can and will be yours when it comes to the life that you decide. So I was just like, if I can create anything that I choose to create, and it's possible for me, and this is my vision for what I wanted to create, then I have to do anything and everything I can do to actualize that into physical reality. Or ultimately, I don't really know what I don't really know what the emotion would be, but I would almost describe it as ashamed. Like, if I didn't go for my life vision, knowing universal principle, knowing that this is how this works, knowing that I could build anything that I wanted to do, if I wound up with a life that wasn't in harmony with what I intended for myself, and I just carried down that path and through that life I choose document in the garbage, then at some point in my life I'd be ashamed of myself. Like, you knew you could build anything. You knew you could do, or have anything you desired to do, and you just threw it in the garbage. So I didn't want to have that conversation with myself because I'm pretty intense as a person. Everybody knows that. And
it wouldn't have ended well.
It wouldn't have ended well. Like, I didn't want to yell at myself like that. So I exited engineering.
So that
way before, there was no financial stability. I'd basically gotten out of student debt, piled up a whole different type of debt to replace it, and jumped and said, you know what, I can't continue down this path. Even though I'm not, like, secure yet, I can't continue down this path even one more day, because if I do, then I'm essentially putting the life I choose on a chopping block, and I just can't do it.
How incredibly ballsy that is to have done all of that. And when we met in 2015, in November of that year,
that was the year.
I had no idea that all of that was going on. And it was just a few months earlier, January, right, of that year, when you had handed in your resignation letter.
Yesterday was my 10-year anniversary of signing that resignation letter.
Wow.
So
oh my gosh.
10 years ago yesterday, I signed that resignation letter.
Best decision you ever made.
I like it. It worked out pretty well for me.
Ever. And at the time, everyone in your friends and family group thought you were absolutely insane.
Oh, yeah. I definitely had the golden handcuffs. I had moved into a prestigious oil and gas company, had a nice position.
Bought a brand new house. Beautiful house. Furnished the whole house.
Had a truck, like, did all the things. I essentially had, like, what you would say was the, like, ultimate, 6 figures and all the
American dream.
The American dream. Yeah, what you would call the golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
It's like, how could you walk away from this? You literally have to be crazy.
All you have to do is exchange your freedom for these golden handcuffs.
You give up your freedom, you can have the golden handcuffs, and that's a pretty fair trade. Fortunately, at the time, I hadn't built a family yet. I didn't have a lot to lose, to risk, and I was able to make that jump, and I did. And 10 months later, I met you, which was awesome. And then you got introduced to my super hot mess. Before I met you, a lot of the stuff that was written in my document, ultimately I discovered later was because I thought that's what I needed to become in order to attract you. Mm-hmm. Which now in hindsight is kind of hilarious. So if you're one of those people that's like, oh, like I've got to be, do, and have all of these things before my perfect mate will be attracted to me, then you and I were similar. I kind of thought that too. And
so when you say that you had started unraveling some of that belief system, though, when we met, because you had given up the prestigious job that was going to really attract all the ladies.
Yeah, so I mean, it's classic. What a like classic dumb mid-20s guy. Like, oh, certainly if I'm fit, and certainly if I have a bunch of money.
If I have the house, if I have the car, if I have the job.
If I have the car, if I have the job, if I have the XYZ, if I have all of this stuff, then certainly
it'll attract the right kind of woman that I want to marry and have kids with.
Will certainly be attracted to that.
Because I like them shallow.
I like them deep as a thimble, like just. Which is funny because it didn't really match like the woman that was in the document. But, you're doing the best you can. But the cool thing is, like, I had started to unravel that, and I guess it was just time for us to intersect. And what was really cool whenever we intersected was that, like, really quickly I got to look at my document. And it was really quickly that it went from a life I choose to a life we choose. Mm-hmm. We were engaged in 6 months. So just throwing that out there. Tell your part of the story.
Yeah,
like,
totally. It was one of those instant connections.
I started calling you my wife like before we were engaged.
People were very confused.
Your mother was like, you can't say that. You're not even engaged. Like you haven't even put a ring on it, man.
But I know
you can't call your wife and good on her.
I know my words are powerful, so I'm gonna say them. I'm gonna speak this into existence. That was it. This is my wife.
I was like, but Terry, like I need to lock this in my own mind that this is gonna happen.
Dun, 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 dun.
So I'm sorry, it's a little strange right now, but you'll see later when you're cuddling your third grandbaby that this is a good thing.
Yeah, totally.
She's so awesome.
So
your mom's the bomb.
It worked out for both of us, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, when we met, I had no idea that you had all of that brewing. What I saw on the outside was you were a really free entrepreneur traveling the country and doing all of these things. And you seemed to be on top of everything and really motivated. And that was really attractive to me because I hadn't really seen many people like you. I still don't know many people like you.
Nor do I.
And that's not just because you're a little crazy. But when we met, I was in my third year of college, right? I was 21. Mm-hmm. I was very lost. I was a lost college student, not in a bad way. I was very motivated. I was involved in almost every college club there was. And I had changed my major 8 times because I couldn't find a single major that really made me feel free. Because at the time through college, I had been on all of these study abroad programs, and I had discovered that I absolutely loved traveling. Even as a kid, my parents say whenever they asked what I wanted for a birthday or for Christmas, I wanted a trip. I wanted a vacation. I wanted to go explore somewhere that I hadn't been before. And so in college, it just clicked with me going on these study abroad programs, not specifically for the information that I was learning in the classes, but more so for the culture, for being in a new place that I'd never been before. And when I went back to these college careers, these majors and minors, I couldn't find a single thing that really gave me that freedom in real life, because once I graduated, I knew that a lot of those majors were attached to a cubicle somewhere doing a job, like punching things into a computer or data entry or whatever it is in an office. And I just couldn't picture myself doing that. I really wanted to be free. I wanted to travel and see more of the world. And so when we met, I saw that you were traveling, you were seeing the world, you were free. And growing up, I hadn't really been introduced to that type of entrepreneurism, to that like no bars, like no box, just free thinking type of entrepreneurship.
I'm doing things. I can be anywhere in the world when I'm doing them. I'm going over there. I'm going over here. I'm trying to figure it out.
And luckily, I had no idea what your financial situation was.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if I had known, I wouldn't have been as attracted to your way of life.
Yeah.
Because I grew up very good with money, very like, what's a good word for frugal? I was very frugal. I was a very good saver. I'm like a chipmunk. I like to squirrel away all of my monies. And so when we met, I had saved up a bunch of money just from serving tables. And I
had no money.
And Jordan had a lot of negative money, not just no money, but negative money.
I was very month to month.
Yes.
I was generally just sliding into home. I always had just enough to be able to meet the obligations and go into the next month poor, hoping I would make it.
So it was a very good balance between the two of us, because as an entrepreneur, you have to take risks sometimes. You have to be okay with the unknown. And I was very much into the security side of things, and you were very much into the jump and we'll figure it out on the way down side of things. And believing that everything was going to work out for you, which was very magnetic as well to me, because I had never met somebody who just believed that everything was going to work out. And the crazy thing was, it always did for you. Like rent was due the next day sometimes, and you had no money in your bank account, and all of a sudden something would hit from some random place, and you all of a sudden had the exact right amount to pay your bills. Yep. So it was incredible seeing that faith in the universe, seeing that belief, and not just belief, but expectation that it was all going to work out. Yeah. And I had never seen that before. I hadn't grown up that way. I had grown up like you need to plan, you need to stash, you need to save, you need to make sure that everything is secure so that you can basically trust yourself. It's not so much a trust in the universe, it's more of a trust in yourself. So you know that you can get through life because you can trust yourself. Yeah. But not really a belief that everything's going to work out for me just because I am me, because I deserve it, because I believe that things will work out.
It sounds kind of crazy.
It is crazy.
I like when you think about it. It's kind of ridiculous.
And a pivotal part for me when we were first dating, I'm sure they'll figure this out eventually, but 3 weeks after we met, we went on a 3-week road trip all the way up to New York from Texas. And I remember this one, I still remember it so vividly. We were at this one building in New York City. We had gone there for New Year's Eve to see the ball drop. And I remember saying a remark, which now I would never say, but I said, something didn't go well for me. Something happened. And I said, well, things like this always happen to me. And I remember you telling me, don't say that. That's not, you don't want to say that. You don't want to speak that into your reality.
Like, do you want this to happen again and again and again? Well, no. We'll never say that again.
Yeah, never say that again. And that was my first click, the first thing that really clicked in my mind that put the power back in my own court of my own existence, because up to that point, it was almost like life was happening to me and I have to be prepared for whatever comes. Right. So it was almost like my identity was in preparation and in security.
And you were really good at it.
And I was really good at it. I was very good at holding on with white knuckles to things.
Oh, you still really are. Like it's
in a healthy way now.
In a healthy way. Yeah, so, I mean, you're that skill set turned out to be a skill set, thank God, and it was teachable.
Right. So
my skill set was like the upbringings were just different. Mine was I had seen things work out month to month to month to month for my family forever, and that's just how they lived. Like you were actually the first introduction I had to like frugality, save money, have multiple months of money piled up just in case.
That
something
must
didn't
feel
work
good.
Out.
That's a nice feeling.
What an interesting concept that is. And on top of that, you throw in entrepreneurship. And that was really a big part of my problem at the time. It wasn't that I didn't want to have money. It was that there are a lot of things you can attempt to throw money at to try to make a business work, right? And that's what I was doing a lot, was saying, well, if I spend this money here, then I'll get the money there.
I can justify it.
Yeah, there was a lot of justification of the spending. So I would make money and then I would spend it all like living or trying to advance the business, living, trying to advance the business, living, trying to advance the business, just kind of not holding on to anything. And then I got introduced to you, and obviously, like, you shifted my mind on that whole side, where I was like, both and. We live in a both and universe. You can trust that the universe will provide and be a good steward of money and frugal and honor your money and giving yourself permission to hang on to some of your money. You know what I mean?
And live stress-free.
And make a lot more money and.
Right. Yeah, so it was this beautiful harmony of us coming together, of me showing you what more than enough feels like, and of you teaching me that I am the creator of my own reality, and that the things that I say and the things that I project are my future. Yeah, I'm literally creating things by my thoughts.
Totally. And I would say like that this whole thing kind of leads to a culmination of a really big moment in our life, where kind of that conversation hit the fan, where it was like this feeling of security was important to you. And that was your emotional state was important enough to me to completely change and edit and alter all my behaviors, because you mattered more to me than anything. So it was like, ultimately, there's this moment that we'll talk about, and that's whenever we like really fully committed to universal principles, and it's like, well, exactly, this must be if this is how it works, then we really got to buckle down on that.
And that really was a pivotal moment in our lives, because we both really like ebbed and flowed into this harmony, where you said you cared so much about me. I had never had somebody like you that I cared so much about either. So I was willing to give up some of that feeling of security and jump into the entrepreneurship like you did. Yep. And so I went more into that side of things, and you went more into the seeking security side of things. But we made the decision mutually to take advantage of this opportunity we'd been given to go to Japan. And I had never actually put money on a credit card up to that point. Right. And you had already maxed out all of your cards. And so in order to make that happen, I had started opening up credit cards in my name, because I had seen your trust in how everything works out, and I had trust in you, and I was starting to trust the universe. So I was like, yeah, I can open up these cards. It's fine.
It sounds like an absolute train wreck. It just sounds like it sounds like this is not going to end well. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, here we are, so it ends well.
You know what? Yeah, it's kind of like you're watching a movie and it ends in. Like, it ends well, it's got to end well, but you're
because
at that point
the actor's
like,
still there.
No.
Do they live?
Don't open the credit cards. Don't open the credit cards.
Bad choice. So I open these 3 credit cards. They give me a big limit because I'm a saver. I've had this relationship with the bank for years, for a decade at that point, even though I was so young, and they trusted me, so they gave me these credit cards.
She's a little mousy girl that doesn't take risks. This is going to be great.
So before I know it, we're in $22,500 of debt in my name alone.
Oh, yeah. And plus mine, which was much more substantial than that at the time.
Right. And I'm getting letters from the lenders saying that they're lowering my credit because I don't have sufficient funds to pay them back. And we're in just this dumpster fire of money that's owed. We've dug this hole that at the time is like $100,000 in the hole.
It was a big hot mess. So it's basically I remember just being thousands of miles from home, pursuing this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
The world outwardly, like, it looks like we're like living the dream, pursuing this like entrepreneurial venture that looked like it was going to be a slam dunk success.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, we spent all this money and did all this stuff and took all these risks and traveled back and forth for, 18 months, year and a half, basically just to absolutely flop and fail.
With no plan B.
With no plan B. So essentially, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you're paying, you're convincing yourself that at some point there's a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow, and sometimes you're sliding down the rainbow real hard and you get down there and it's not a pot of gold at the end. You know what I mean? And it's like, holy crap. Or better said, there is a pot of gold, but it's not what you thought it was. That's where we were. Everything was so maxed out. Every credit card was maxed out. Bank accounts at zero. I think
we transferred 14 cents from one bank account to the other.
At one point, I transferred like a very, very insignificant amount, like
to
less
avoid
than a
an overdraft fee.
Yeah, to attempt to avoid an overdraft fee. Like I'd rather have this 14 cents in this account than that one. I literally at this point did not have enough money in the accounts to even make an ATM withdrawal. Like, I didn't have the ATM withdrawal fee, let alone any money to pull out.
And the climax of that time was the morning that we woke up. We went to the refrigerator to find something to eat for breakfast. There was no milk, no eggs. We had ran out of our oatmeal that we had brought from America.
Yeah, we'd been like packing oatmeal into the country, like to have like sustenance. We ran out of that.
Jordan still hates oatmeal to this day because of that.
It's growing on me. It's growing on me.
So we wake up and we have no food in the refrigerator, and we look at our accounts and we have no money. We don't have enough money to take out of the ATM to even buy more food with.
All the credit cards are maxed out.
All of the cards are maxed out, and we just feel completely defeated.
Yeah, defeated, demoralized. I mean, just
like we had failed.
Awful,
like we made a awful choice.
And we're in the middle of 80+ million people that do not speak the language. Like there aren't even ABCs on the signs. It's like
so we're alone in our failures.
We're alone in our failure, just like sitting here.
And so I feel like the choice came down to one, claim bankruptcy.
Definitely an option.
At 22 and 29, claim bankruptcy. That's it. For the next 7 years of our life, no home buying, no family, no good life.
No credit.
No credit.
No bueno.
So it was either claim bankruptcy, go get a job. So go back to those golden handcuffs of engineering as a failure.
When you say it out loud, it's like it doesn't sound.
It's the truth.
Yeah. Or three.
Or three, commit to what we knew to be true, which was universal principles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that we talked about all the time, that we said, this is how things work. This is how the universe operates. If we say things to be so, then they are. Yeah. And at that point, we hadn't fully committed to them. We had kind of played the hokey pokey with our vibrations, where we were really playing the drum of not enough in our vibration.
Yeah. Well, and that was exactly it. Like, as ultimately what I had figured out was just like, I know these universal laws to be true. I've proven them to myself over and over again. But ultimately what happened was financially, for some reason, like I was playing the vibrational hokey pokey with it, which was I want it, but that's kind of what the vibrational hokey pokey sounds like. It's sort of like I really want to be financially independent and really be, really have my stuff together and make a lot of money and have a lot of money and have a lot of assets. But here are all the reasons why I don't yet. And even sometimes if you're forward looking into positivity, but continually affirming that you are where you are, that's sort of the vibrational hokey pokey of like wanting one thing, but then engaging mentally in another idea about yourself. And I remember around that point, there was a statement that I said all the time. And we kind of had this revelation sort of around that. And I'd like to hit that. But at the culmination of this little story, that day, I remember feeling that way, feeling so defeated. And then there was this little weird spark of hope that happened because in Japan, they have 7-Elevens. They have these, like, they call them konbinis, but it's a convenience store. Konbini, convenience, convenience store. So our concept of a convenience store got introduced to Japan. And inside of those stores, you could actually buy food on your train pass. And it dawned on me that I had $7 equivalent, about $7 left on my train pass. So I was like looking at this thing like I had just won the lottery.
Rich.
Like I was like, I can feed my wife. I'm still a failure, but I can at least get food. And so like I ran down to 7-Eleven and I remember buying like basic groceries, whatever I could get it was like milk, eggs, bread, and then I think I celebrated with like a couple of corn dogs. Couple of corn dogs, yeah. This is like meal of champions, But at that point, we had eggs and milk and bread, like enough to like sustain us for a few days before the next installment of whatever on this wheel, this roller coaster wheel.
The hamster wheel
would
with
happen.
the bank account.
Yeah, the hamster wheel, the bank account. But so there was that moment, and then from there we decided, like if we're gonna do this, like if we're really gonna win, if we're not gonna take bankruptcy, and we discussed the job thing, and it would require us being separated, which was like wasn't an option. Like it gave me like a nervous tick to think about us not being together. Like it's
there
still
is
not
no
right.
separating.
That's why it's the Jordan Vanessa Show. It's the Vanessa and Jordan show. It's like that's the show.
Not Vanessa and Jordan goes to work show.
Not
or
Vanessa
Jordan
goes
works
to work
well.
while Jordan's at home in his maid outfit cleaning the house out. No, it's the Jordan and Vanessa show.
It's the only option.
This is the only option. Once we realized that, it was like, well, the only way I know how to get out of this mess, basically, is to actually fully commit to the principles.
Correct.
And I think a lot of people really know that about whatever principles they engage in. I think they know that if I really lock in and I really did the deal, if I wasn't acting like I was doing the deal, but actually engaging something else, kind of like the idea of like if you're on a diet, it's like acting like you're eating greens, but sneaking into the closet and eating potato chips. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of incongruency is like
right. That
like,
hokey pokey of not fully deciding and committing to it.
Exactly. If we just did this, then universal law states it's universal law, not universal good idea that sometimes works whenever you want to get some stuff or whatever. It's universal law. So
it's unwavering.
It's unwavering. It's
always.
It's consistent.
Yes, always consistent.
Always present, omnipresent. So,
and that's really where Vibration Fit was conceived. If you think about what Vibration Fit is today in our minds, that's where it was conceived, because up until that point, we had not bridged the gap between the woo-woo stuff, all of the universal principles and universal law, and we hadn't bridged that gap between the woo-woo and the how-to.
Not fully, because there were areas of our life that were just like suffering, and you don't have to like be in that state to exist. You know what I mean? It's
right.
Like something in my vibration's not right here, because I wouldn't be six figures in the hole having to like being thrilled I found $7 on a train pass. Like there's something not right here. And it was from that moment that we said, what would happen if we just really fully committed to the principles and stopped playing the hokey pokey with our vibration? Like what if we did that, you know? And we just decided in that moment, like, essentially, it's not even an idea of what you're going to engage in, because like that's a lot of, like, we kind of know that, and most people do know that, like, oh, think happy thoughts, think positive, think this, think that. It's more about what you decide you're not going to tolerate anymore, what you're never going to tolerate again. I cannot tolerate that thought. That thought has no presence in my mind. It is not invited. You're not invited to a birthday party. Don't even know how you got the invitation. You're out of my head now. Not engaging you. I'm not engaging that.
Because that thought brought me here, and I don't choose here for my future.
Nailed it. So it's like the moment that I'm living is actually who I was, not who I am. But as long as you continue to tolerate the thought that got you here, then you're going to continue to go there, and you're going to continue to live that way.
Because of the law of attraction, it basically builds momentum around those thoughts, which makes it difficult day to day, because a lot of our lives are just run on autopilot.
Yeah.
A lot of our emotions, so the chemicals that are released in our body and the thoughts that release those chemicals, they are all on autopilot. So unless you have something like frameworks to actually engage whenever those things come up, it can be so easy to just continue to let those programs run in the background throughout your day.
And that's going to be your default. So really, at that point, and this is pretty much where we're going to wrap up this episode. We'll kind of wrap up this story, and then we'll call it. But at that moment, we made that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And we basically became intolerant of thoughts, thought patterns, belief patterns, ideas about ourselves that weren't in harmony with us being abundant. And one story that I really remember right around that time was I was always saying this statement, and I was proud of it, of sliding into home. Sliding into home, babe. We made it just again. Like, we just made it again. We just made enough. We have just enough to make it, just enough to pay this, just enough to pay the minimums, just enough to pay the rent, just enough to buy gas, just enough to buy the corn dog. Like, we always, and that's what I was sort of like proud of. And I remember it was around this time and around that revelation that was one of those pieces of stinking thinking that I identified and found. And I remember walking across the flat in Japan, and
on the 23rd floor.
On the 23rd floor. And I remember walking across and stopping dead in my tracks. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm doing this to us. I was like, this is me. I was like, I am never saying that again. From this moment forward, we will be abundant. We will have more than enough. And at that moment, I literally like 12 gauge shotgun that idea. Boom. Like there is no just enough. There is no sliding into home. I am abundant. We will have more than enough. From this moment on, I will never say that again. And I didn't. And that was the moment that insane abundance just started to like, it was like a ramp. But I remember, like, sometimes whenever you can identify those things, basically around fully committing to principle, when you can identify those things that aren't in harmony because you fully committed, but you don't see them sometimes until you had fully committed to the other, and you realize how out of harmony that is with the commitment. It's like, wait a minute, that's not in harmony, this is in harmony. The speed with which we went from there to not only a complete resolution to the financial problem, but insane abundance. Like, insane abundance. Where before you were 30 years old, you'd made your first million. Like, that path came directly from that time, that decision, that commitment that we made at that time. And whenever we did it, we did. Like, we really did become vibration fit around money at that time. And it led to obviously where we are now.
Yeah, a beautiful life. We live in the place of our dreams. We have a beautiful family life. We have 3 kids, 7 months, 3 years, and 5 years old. And we get to spend so much time with them. We spend a lot of our time out on boats. We go out to different islands. We love exploring. We love going and doing fun things with the kids. We love going on adventures and traveling. So it's just like this beautiful life that we've created because of the choice that we made that day in Japan to just fully commit and stop playing the vibrational hokey pokey. And that's exactly why we're here, sharing these moments of clarity so that we remember who we are and we can carry that into our future and just continue to be the people that we feel drawn to be, be fully those people. Yep. So sharing those frameworks, sharing the things that have worked for us.
Yeah. So in the months and years to come, there will be a lot more of this. This is kind of us capturing some clarity on like how you even got here.
Being goofballs.
Obviously, we'll unpack that a lot. It'll be a lot of fun. This one was kind of intense.
We'll answer questions.
Yeah, we're going to do all sorts of stuff. We've got huge plans for this podcast, but ultimately, for you to have a podcast, you got to do the first one. And
here we are showing up.
I think we just did it. So
that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. First one in the bag. So
thanks for listening.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Anybody that ever watches this, at the end of the day, it's probably just going to be us. That's how anything starts. But I'll be happy to stare at your face on camera.
Sending love and light to all. Thank you.
Stay cool.